Hi everyone, and thanks for tuning in. My name is Brian Dahlberg, and today I'll be sharing with you a project that I've been working on in the Evolutionary and Adaptive Systems Group at Indiana University, in collaboration with the Bordeaux Izquierda. Let me start by motivating the work. Most organisms use multiple strategies in parallel to accomplish a goal. This is especially true for tasks that are fundamental to survival, such as finding food or navigating back home. For example, some species are capable of integrating information from different strategies, including path integration, visual landmarks, and cognitive maps. This includes diverse animals such as desert ants, honeybees, monarch butterflies, salmon, sea turtles, mice, rats, migratory birds, and humans. So the question we're focusing on in this work is this: how can we understand the contributions from different strategies towards a common goal? In the simplest case, when there are just two strategies, are the different strategies redundant, complementary, or synergistic? And do the contributions from each strategy change across different environments? C. elegans is an ideal candidate to study these questions with, because its spatial orientation behaviors have been studied in great detail. We can also study the neural basis of these behaviors because of its small number of neurons, reconstructed connectome, and our ability to do whole brain imaging on a freely moving worm during behavior. Depending on experience, C. elegans can learn to orient towards odor sources, chemicals, temperatures, and even oxygen levels. Whenever the worm is moving towards one of these attractants, it relies on two strategies. The first is called the pirouette strategy, and it's a kind of random biased walk, in which the worm randomly reorients whenever it's moving away from the source. The second strategy is called the weathervane strategy, and in this strategy, the worm gradually adjusts its course left or right towards the greater sense stimulus. In order to address the question of how each strategy contributes to the overall behavior, we need to understand how each strategy works in isolation. To do this, we decided to build upon the model proposed by Ino and Yoshida in 2009. In this model, the worm is represented by a point moving in 2D space. At each time step, the worm calculates a new heading that is subject to the pirouette strategy, the weathervane strategy, and a certain amount of random curving that changes over time. These strategies can be selectively turned on and off so we can study them in isolation. When both strategies are turned off, the model worm still pirouettes. It just doesn't modulate the frequency of its pirouettes anymore. We tested the model worms and simulated 20-minute chemotaxis assays that replicate the experimental assays. In order to assess the contributions of each strategy, we ran 5,000 model worms under 4 variations of the model: the regular worm behavior, where both strategies are operating; model worms with only the weathervane strategy; model worms with only the pirouette strategy; and model worms with no orientation strategy. The model worms that use both strategies perform similar to living worms. Model worms that use only the weathervane strategy contributed more to the overall orientation behavior than the model worms that use only the pirouette strategy. Weathervane alone contributed to 69% of the overall performance, while pirouette strategy alone contributed only to 38% of it. Because these add up to 107%, it suggests that there is some redundancy between the strategies, but by and large, the two strategies are complementary, with each offering a unique contribution to the orientation behavior. In order to examine how the relative contributions change across different environments, we scaled the gradient by a multiplicative factor to make it shallower or steeper. A scale factor of 1 represents the original gradient based on traditional experimental assays. From the experiment, we can see that the relative contributions of the two strategies does indeed change with the environment. The pirouette strategy contributes more in shallow gradients than in steep gradients, whereas the weathervane strategy contributes more in steep gradients than in shallow gradients. Also, we found that in shallow gradients, the contributions from the strategies are more complementary. But in steep gradients, the contributions from the strategies are more redundant. So to recall, we began this project asking, how are parallel strategies used to achieve the same goal? And to what extent are the contributions unique or redundant? We chose a computational model of spatial orientation strategies in C. elegans as an ideal system to study these questions. What we found was that each strategy contributes uniquely to C. elegans chemotaxis performance, with the weathervane strategy making a larger contribution to the overall behavior. We also found that the weathervane strategy is especially well suited for steep environments, whereas the pirouette strategy contributes the most in shallow environments. And, although I did not show it here, we also analyzed the contributions from the two strategies across a range of other environments and the effect of noisy environments. I'd be happy to talk further with anyone who'd like to learn more about this work. Thanks so much.